This podcast is brought to you by the Prospect Research Institute, where researchers come to learn, innovate, and connect.
We looked at the database to see who hadn't re-engaged and started a full initiative and built a program to welcome them back. And over 2 years, the total raised was $1 million that had just left, that no one was asking them anymore. And it was as simple as asking them and re-engaging them. And it seems so simple, but it does take a lot of work to do.
Welcome to Prospect Research Chat Bites, a podcast by and for prospect research professionals. I'm Jennifer Filla. Today, I'm talking with Jennifer Paquette, a nonprofit operations professional. Hello, Jen. Thank you for joining me today on Chat Bites.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
So before we jump into a discussion about data, I'm wondering if you'd be willing to share with me, how did you land into the nonprofit sector and in fundraising?
Sure. So I think like most people, I ended up in nonprofit kind of by accident. My background is actually in IT, and I was supporting systems with an IT consulting firm. I took some time aside to raise my kids, and when I was looking to get back into the workforce, I was contacted by a friend of mine with United Way, and they were integrating a new system. So I joined them and just fell in love with everything nonprofit. So I just dove right into, everything that they were doing on the gift side, on the fundraising side, and operations just became a love of mine, particularly the data side, of course. So from there, I took an opportunity at Boys and Girls Clubs as the Director of Development Operations. And that led me ultimately to where I am today, which is with Connecticut Children's Medical Center Foundation. And I manage the data health and analysis. And this particular role is very meaningful to me because my son is a patient in their neurology department. So it's great to do good things for a place that means a lot. So that's where I am today.
Awesome. Yeah, it's amazing all the pathways into the nonprofit sphere. Very interesting that you have such a close connection to your current position. A little scary too, I would imagine.
Yes. It certainly makes a big difference in how you look at the day-to-day when you have a personal connection with the mission, for sure.
And everyone everywhere struggles with data. It doesn't matter how big the place is or how small the place is. And nearly as soon as we get that information into our databases, which can be a hurdle all by itself, then it goes stale. There's bad data in there. People move. They change their phone numbers. Their email doesn't work anymore. Since you've been steeped in all of that, how can an organization get on track to keep all that mess under management?
I think the biggest thing is creating that culture. Whether you're a one-person shop or have a staff of 50, making sure that everyone understands how important the data is. So with any contact or any gift that comes in, if there's new information, taking those extra steps to update it within your database and verifying it anytime you're accessing a record, it just has such a huge payoff in the end, and it's truly worth every minute it takes to put that work in, starting from day one. So updating information when somebody's sending a check or filling out an online form, but also to not forget about the rest of your database, those that haven't recently engaged. If you've only communicated with those that are active, if you've gotten into that cycle kind of, the donors that aren't maintaining contact with you, those are the ones that are at risk of lapsing, and you will potentially miss that opportunity to re-engage them if you're not seeking out tools to update that information. And most CRMs have some type of integrated tool to review and verify, addresses at the very least. If you can budget for it, and it's definitely something that you should budget for, it's something that you can do at least annually, would maintain that piece of the database. Smaller shops can sometimes also use just the first class mailing with the return service through the NCOA. So, you send out to your entire database and you'll get postcards back that say, address change, or this is no longer a valid address, and you can begin to kind of do that work to dig in and fix what's not working within the database.
Who shoulders that building a culture of good data?
if you're a one-person shop, then it's just something to be mindful of. But when you have, a larger staff, it's kind of everybody's responsibility. And typically the system side, there's always somebody that's maintaining the system or that has an interest in the system itself. And training is so important, understanding where to put the information, how to put the information in, even just having staff meetings talking about the importance of the data, showing here's a group of donors that have lapsed and showing the risk of that and, the loss of revenue that's potential for not maintaining that information for sure.
Do you have any exciting data stories where like the data was updated and it turned out that they made a big gift or, there was some reconnection, anything like that?
So it's funny. I don't have any personal big gift stories, but I tell you, I've heard some. When I was with United Way, I did a large initiative with lapsed donors, and it's just something that they hadn't looked at in so many years. They were in that active donor cycle. So we looked at the database to see who hadn't re-engaged and started a full initiative and reached out to all of them and built a program to welcome them back. And over 2 years, the total raised was $1 million that had just left, that no one was asking them anymore. And it was as simple as asking them and re-engaging them. And it seems so simple, but it does take a lot of work to do. And I think, for smaller shops especially, it's easy to just only look at the active because they're right there in front of you. They're easier to communicate with. But taking the time to step back and look at what the donors are telling you through their giving is so important. So I digress, but while I was going through this process, I ended up presenting my lapsed program on webinars through United Way, and many of them had stories where they had donors that, they gave $100 every year for many, many years, and they were re-engaged in a way where, they spoke about their interests. And, all of a sudden large gifts came in, or they later found out that they were part of their planned giving and they were in the will. So the stories are definitely out there. I've heard it so many times, and I can't wait for the day that it happens to me.
One-on-one, right? You want that person
yes.
to call.
Absolutely. Call them all.
Well, it's interesting because people want to be heard. They want to be listened
Definitely.
to, even when their gifts are small. So you mentioned the planned gift. That's where a lot of those surprises come from.
Yes, absolutely. And I have to say, it's one of the biggest pieces of feedback I've gotten throughout my career is when a donor doesn't feel like you know them, they'll call you and they will tell you, whether it's just you've misspelled their name or a gift you've referenced wasn't their most recent, or you're engaging with them in a way that doesn't speak to them, they'll certainly let you know because, feeling like you're not just a number is so important. And I think, all of us feel that way all the time.
Sure. And giving is not a natural thing. I mean, I earned
Absolutely.
that money and I'm giving it to you.
Right, for sure. In our culture now, donors have access to any nonprofit and can give at any point in time. And they've chosen you, and there's a reason they've chosen you, and learning why is so important, and it should mold how you're communicating with them for sure. The results are far greater when you're engaging with them in a way that they know they're understood.
So when it comes to fundraising, just generally speaking, what is most important to be able to do with your data?
Just what I was speaking about, truly being able to tell a story, your donor story, the story of what's working and what's not, why they've been giving to you, why did they initially engage with you, and using that information to segment them and tailor your communications. Of course, it would be great to be able to call them all on an annual basis and check in and, and find out information and see how they're doing. But of course, that's not possible for most nonprofits. But if you're tracking their interests and their engagement, your database can serve as that check-in and kind of keep you posted on what they care about.
So when you're looking at past giving history, those donors are talking to you. They're saying,
absolutely.
I didn't give last year, but I gave the year before. You should probably find out why. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. And if you're tracking what it is that you're communicating to the donors, you can see what they've responded to and what they haven't responded to, or even as simple as they always give in December. So if you send them 5 direct mail pieces every year and they're only responding in December, That's an important piece of information, and it's possible that they may get tired of seeing the 5 and they only want to see the 1, So definitely paying attention to the donor behavior is just so important.
And that brings me to my next question about the different formats and sources of data, because now we have social media, which means a lot of different platforms. We do e-newsletters, we do all kinds of email campaigns to our donors and our constituency generally. How do you pull all that together, or should we, or in fundraising, should we be looking at some of those stats, and how do we match that to our donors?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially with all the tools that are available now with email communications, you can see, the open rate, the click rate, and it's so important because, you can see if you're sending communications to a donor and they haven't opened them, maybe email is not the way that they communicate. And knowing that is so important. I remember the days when email was the up and coming, and it was so important to focus solely on that. But over time, we're finding that people have emails where they use it as just kind of a dump land, that they just throw everything that goes there because they're so used to receiving email communications that so many are not engaging that way anymore. As you know, donor bases are aging out and the new generations are coming in and they communicate much differently as well. So understanding how they're communicating with you, if you're sending direct mail and email communications and they always respond via mail, and maybe email is not the way that they are engaging with you. And CRMs typically have places for this information. And if you're not sure, if you're a smaller shop and don't have somebody that's focused on your system, contact the CRM vendor and, see what tools they have for you to track this information. Even if your last resort is just dumping a bunch of notes on their account, which is not advisable, but if that's the only tool you have, capturing it is just so important.
So in your work at United Way, in your work at the hospital now, are the systems all talking to each other? So when emails are sent out, is that marked in the CRM? And do you know from the CRM whether they opened it or clicked on it?
Every setup is very different. I have yet to find a one-stop shop where everything's integrated into one system. But most of the time, there are abilities to have them connected and information can go in. Sometimes that's not possible or you don't have the staff to sort that out. I have spoken with many that have one person doing it all, and that's fairly common. But every email system does have those stats available to you. So even if you were just looking at it manually, making note on the donor's records, again, just having it is priceless.
It is. I struggle with it as a business owner because my systems don't talk to each other. So it's difficult for me to track things over the long term.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the vendors that you're using or any nonprofit is using, it's so common to have them connected. So, even reaching out to them and finding, they may be your IT support. So reaching out to them to see what options are available, or if nothing else, maybe making a leap to one that does speak to your primary CRM database. I know it's tough for a lot of nonprofits due to budget and staffing and all of that, but when you can get yourself in a place to do those types of things, the payoff truly, truly is so big.
It is. It's worth paying extra for that integration when it really is integrated.
Right. Yes. I've worked with some that the integration was not so great, but the information is available though, regardless of how it gets from one place to the other. It is available, and that's good.
It is. So prospect research professionals can be asking for that data from, say, their marketing departments or other places, maybe not in fundraising necessarily.
Right, absolutely, for sure.
As you mentioned, with the younger generations not communicating in the same way, what we might find is that we have people who are engaged but haven't been asked outright.
Correct.
Which is a missing opportunity.
Definitely. We actually have some initiatives with our local colleges. We're finding that the addresses we're getting are their college address, but we're having, you get the name, first name, last name, and email, which is scary to think about if that's all you're getting, but communicating with them in a way that's meaningful for them can translate them to a lifelong donor. And a lot of mobile giving is a big thing now. even social media. They're still building it, I feel. Facebook has their giving platform, and I think that it's still a tool that they're building. Venmo is another one they're working on, trying to integrate some philanthropy as well. The giving landscape is definitely beginning to shift, and paying attention to that and speaking to the younger generations to find out what is meaningful for them, because they are very, very savvy, and who they choose to engage with is so very important to them. It's no longer something where it's like generational. There's a lot of that where my parents and my grandparents always gave to this one mission. It's a big decision now for the younger generations, which is amazing. And I think it's going to really, really change the layout of giving in the future for sure.
It's their personal brand.
Yeah, it really is. It really is, which is so great to watch, truly. But it's a little scary from the nonprofit side, because everything's been kind of the same for so long that it's scary to think about. How do you shift? How do you include the aging donors and the new generations, because they are extremely different?
Well, on a prospect research side, it is time to start thinking about new ways of evaluating how we identify and prioritize.
Right.
I have a client who came to me and was working primarily with tech people. He had names and email addresses and nothing else. And he said, okay, I need to prioritize. I have too many. I'm like, well, I got nothing from that.
Right.
There's not much I can do there without some serious manual research, and that's time.
Absolutely.
He did have a few more data points, from his interactions that he'd been tracking. So we're looking at taking it in chunks, but that is tough. That's scary for us on fundraising, to have to let go of knowing these people in a way they might not want to be known.
Absolutely. And even the tools that exist today may not be as useful for tomorrow, kind of what you're saying. It's the age of first name, last name, email, or first name, last name, and mobile number. And there aren't really tools built where you can send out your database and get the updates back and find out information like there is with, say, address updates and that sort of thing. I think even the technology world is just starting to look at all of that. In social media, a lot of those accounts are connected to email and mobile. So it'll be interesting to see, the direction all of that goes in.
Well, I hope we stay on top of it, because on the flip side, we do have companies collecting hordes of data on us. So
correct.
Whether it's, Venmo allowing us to, as nonprofit organizations, allowing us to see some of that data, some of those key pieces of activity that might help us, or maybe nonprofits get to lead the way on defining what's acceptable or how to opt in to give information.
Right, absolutely, for sure. I think the nonprofit world is a little more thoughtful of how you gain information and how you utilize it, maybe more so than the for-profit world. So I feel like thinking about the privacy of everyone, which is so important, maybe our world might pioneer all of that, because we do take care in how we proceed,
I'd love to see that happen.
Absolutely.
And things change so fast. So before I let you go, I'm curious, what key resources are you consulting regularly to keep current as all this changes?
Truly, networking has just by far been the best tool in my career. Finding other nonprofits that are accomplishing what you hope to accomplish, even ones that are struggling with the same things, and getting together and brainstorming. It's how I found you a few years back. I look all the time for articles and other nonprofits and to see what they're up to and what are they doing. There's no reason not to reach out and say, hey, we'd like to accomplish what you're accomplishing. Help us through that, because it truly, it saves so much time and energy in the trial and error of using a new tool or trying a new platform. Search out nonprofits. They don't have to necessarily be next door, even if they're across the country. Make a call to your equal at their shop and just find out what they're doing and discuss the issues that you're seeing. Or you can even start a local lunch and learn, reach out to nonprofits and say, hey, this topic is a struggle for ours. Is it for you as well? Let's all get together and talk about it. Most nonprofits are happy to share their successes and even their failures, to say, we've tried this and this did work or this didn't work.
Well, that is great advice. Thank you so much for sharing today. It was a really fun conversation.
It was a fun conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
That was Jennifer Paquette, a nonprofit operations professional. Although the trendy topics today are around artificial intelligence and machine learning, as Jennifer points out, listening to your donor data can be as simple as focusing on lapsed donors with million-dollar gift results. Hey, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come check out the Prospect Research Institute's learning community. It's a membership community with powerful resources, great discussions, and comprehensive courses. Check it out at member.prospectresearchinstitute.org. I'd love to have you join me as a member of the learning community. See you there.